Hi, everyone. Coach Anna here, and I'm here with Jay Teagues, and he is in the military, and he's going to tell us about military decision-making process and how to use it and how it can help us make better decisions. He is also a high-performance coach through Brendan Burchard, and he has a podcast called Do Hard Things. And his point of view is fantastic. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy having him here. So Jay, would you tell us about how we can utilize this process to make better decisions for ourselves?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been great to connect with you in the circles that we've been involved in coaching and whatnot. And so I'm honored to be here. And what's great about the military decision-making process is that it's a structured format, right, to help you make better decisions. And no matter who you are, whether you're a military organization or a company or a person, we're always making decisions on a day-to-day basis. When you have a structure or a step-by-step process, it enables you to make better decisions. So you graciously invited me on to talk about the military decision-making process, which is a process that we use in the military to help us make decisions, but it's also been adopted by not only US forces, by all branches, but our NATO partners use this format. And it's also been adopted by big business. And I think that there's aspects of this that anyone can put into their life. And so, yeah, that's what I want to kind of talk about today. Can you see the slides on my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And I appreciate you making them for us.
Yeah, no, I'm very visual, so I'm hoping that that it will help. So let me so basically I'm just going to briefly just kind of describe the military decision-making process. I'm going to try to tailor it in a way that you can implement it into your life and give you a scenario of how you could use it. And then, we can just talk about making decisions. So a little bit about me. You did a brief intro, but yes, I've been in the military for the last 25 years. I've served enlisted and as an officer. So career soldier. I've been doing this since I was 17. I'm a high performance coach certified through Brendan Burchard's Academy, like you have now. I'm an endurance athlete. I'm also a running coach. I like the health and wellness space. I'm divorced. I've battled depression. I have not, although I have mastered the science of achievement, there have been periods in my life where I did not master the art of fulfillment. And I've had some low points I've faced suicide ideation and I've dealt with depression. And I'm on the other side of a divorce, and I'm a single father of triplets. I'm still finishing up my military career, and I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And one of the things that's compelled me to become a coach is we all struggle. And I think that there's a lot of mistakes that I've made because I just didn't know. And I want other people to not make the same mistakes that I made. So that's
Before we go on, could you tell me what you mean by the difference between what did you say? You said the difference between fulfillment and achievement. So that is very interesting to me. I love that you said that, because achievement and checking things off of your to-do list is quite a different thing than inner fulfillment.
Yeah, the science of achievement, right? Like having processes and systems to get things done. Like what we're going to talk about today is a step-by-step process, right, to make a decision. That's science. That's tangible action that you can do. Like having project management software and really having all of your tools, like the tools that you would use on your cell phone or your project management software. All of those things. That's all science, right? That's being able to take things and with some application, make things happen, right? But achievement doesn't always necessarily mean that you're going to be happy. I mean, it does give you a sense of accomplishment when you complete something, but true happiness comes from not only achieving things, but it comes with our connection from other people. It's coming from having those experiences that make us feel alive and having meaningful pursuits that really fill our cup. So there are a lot of high achieving people that still are miserable and unhappy. I think about a story that comes to mind. Tony Robbins told the story, was Robin Williams, right? Everyone knows Robin Williams. Very few people have not had an impact like of what he ultimately took his life, right? We have all, for the most part, like he's been around the country. He asked people, hey, different countries in the world. He goes to his events, like, how many of you know Robin Williams? Raise your hand, not only if you know him, but if you love him. And like most people, like 99% of people will raise their hand. There's gonna be 1% that won't. It's just the way it is, right? People. 99% of people love Robin Williams. And he, what he did was he wanted a #1 sitcom in comedy, and he did it. He wanted an amazing family. He created it. He wanted to make millions of dollars, more than he could spend. He created it. He wanted to win an Academy Award for making movies that weren't comedies. He achieved it. So he mastered the arts of, or the science of achievement. Like he was an achiever, but he never quite mastered the art of fulfillment, and ultimately took his life because I think people just have demons and there's just something missing there. So although you can achieve at a high level, there's still that aspect of the art of fulfillment that we have to master for ourselves to find that true happiness. And it doesn't always come with achievement.
Right. And I think as a person who's an addict and specializes in addiction, that it's really a hard wiring in the brain. We all know that Robin Williams was a recovering alcoholic. And
Yeah.
he, in fact, had attended an AA meeting in San Francisco that morning from reports that I read. And he did acts of service there. You know, he
he like made everyone's coffee or something like
Yes.
that. Right. That was just not long before he took his own life.
So we can speculate what was missing or what wasn't missing, but we know from science that 95% of what we think and what we've done yesterday will continue to think and do. So it starts with an awareness, and it starts with moving towards fulfillment. So it sounds like you have some experience with that. And I know that you're changing the direction that you're going, and you're doing things that are much more fulfilling in your life. Was that part of your journey?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, I look at forms of escapism. So my addiction was video games. Like I want to say in my 20s, I would go to work and I would come home at night and I would just plug into video games. That was my addiction. And, for a bit, this is a subject that some people don't want to talk about, but pornography is a problem. It was a problem for me in my life for one point in time. Drinking, I never got to like the alcoholic or phase, but I started to overindulge. And what I did was I'm like, okay, I need to really retrain myself and how I'm spending my time, so I need to get myself in some therapy, and I need to replace these bad habits with good habits. And I think it's why I really thrived as an endurance athlete, because I really got addicted to basically changed the addiction from video games to like running and cycling and other things, but things that were a little bit more positive.
Right. And I think you said something, very telling, was that developing new habits or focusing your mind on new things, which is what you're doing. And
Yeah.
it's slow over time. I think that we don't just go from being unfulfilled to fulfilled because we make a decision to do it. But having a good decision
Yeah.
making process could probably help us prioritize what brings our life meaning. Like we don't have to use decision making just to figure out what we're going to do for our business or what we're going to do strategically to make sure we can retire comfortably or whatever it is. We can also use decision making to decide what isn't serving us well and what our true priorities are. So we can use it for
Absolutely.
all
Absolutely.
kinds of things. So I'm really excited to hear about this. But I thought that was very interesting that you definitely understand there's a huge difference between achievement and fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been there, and I feel like I just don't want people to make the same mistakes. I wish there's a lot of knowledge. I feel like I'm highly educated. I went to high school. I've got a lot of military training. I pursued a couple master's degrees. Nothing prepared me for some of the basics of life, like how to have a fulfilling relationship, or how to manage my time more effectively, and how to be happy. I did all these things thinking that I was going to like seek happiness, but I was miserable. I played this character where everything looked like I had it all together, but I'm miserable. So I'm like, you know what? Suicide's not an option. But I became passionate about studying the world's highest performers and what makes them so happy. How do they make it look so flawless? And so that's what, and my life has transformed since then. I feel incredibly happy now, and I'm able to help other people. And, I'm a different person than I was 8 years ago because of the conversations that we're having today, these systems and mastering achievement and understanding the art of fulfillment and shoring up both those aspects of my life.
Yes. And I think, from visiting with you, I know you prioritize family, you prioritize your relationships, and you actually have a strategic plan for feeding those relationships with your girls, with your significant other, and so.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredibly important. Your relationships, having connection to other human beings is so incredibly important. Your relationships will directly affect your quality of life. The quality of your relationships are directly influence quality. I'm an introvert naturally. And when I look back at the most miserable times of my life, I was really disconnected. My friendships were fickle. In fact, I got to a point where I just didn't even want to hang out with people. And that's when I was like, and I felt lonely. And then it's a perpetual cycle, like a spiraling out of control cycle where you feel alone and miserable. And it's hard to crawl out of that. But for me as an introvert, making that a priority to make sure that I spend intentional time with my family and girlfriend and have experiences and having good friends and there's times that I don't want to go. I'll be honest. We do like my group of friends that do like a weekly dinner. There are some Sunday nights where I'm just like, man, I just want to stay home. But I'm like, I know over time, if I continue to do that, I'm going to make the habit of not showing up and I'm going to feel alone again. So I make myself go. And then when I go, I feel better.
Right.
So it's like
So you,
identifying that you may not want to go, but the discipline of doing it, knowing that you're going to feel better on the other side is where it's at.
right. So you're basically taking that old 95% that says, oh, wouldn't you just rather stay home? Wouldn't you rather be alone? And you're saying, well,
Yeah.
wait a minute, what did that get me? That
Absolutely.
got me lonely and that got me isolated. And so now you're noticing, well, that thought comes up, but is that true? Is that what I really want to do? And then you make the decision to do the next right thing for yourself, which is to be involved in spite of that programming that's in there that tells you to, just go off by yourself.
Yeah. Enduring happiness requires a little bit of work. You can get the cheap happiness from watching Netflix or getting an ice cream or all that. That's just a quick dopamine hit. That's not real happiness.
Right.
Enduring happiness requires some work and it requires some level of intention. But man, it fills your cup up when you engage in it regularly.
Right. There's the old saying, if you want to be different, do different. And I think that that's what we have to do. And I think too, we have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. If we want to have changes, we have to be like, it's not going to feel normal and it's not going to feel natural when we change our direction, but let's get started with this because I'm sure that this is going to be helpful for people to decide things in their lives.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. That's the intent there. That's how we do this work. So, all right, let's talk about the military decision-making process. Oh, let's see here. Okay. It's knowing if and when, like if to decide and when to decide. That's what decision-making is. It's like, when do I need to make a decision? What decision do I need to make? Is it in the military, we always think about decision points, like when in time and space do I need to make this decision to influence change to those, to the operation? The military decision-making process is a 7-step process. This is typically used by battalions and above. So this is higher level thinking, but the process is the same. So typically when we do this, I mean, this is really in depth. It requires not only the commander, but an entire staff of people to really get to the level of detail that we need. However, the principles of this process will still apply to, a person. And the example I'm going to give is buying a car. So we'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh, that's great. I love that it's an everyday thing that's relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. So although it can get incredibly complicated, I guess I just want to throw that caveat out there. Military operations are incredibly complicated. And we do a lot of analysis to develop these courses of action that I'll talk you through in a moment, but it can also be used by just you and yourself. So in the military though, I just want everyone to know that this process is typically used by larger level organizations, but it's still applicable to your life. And this is an analytical approach to solving problems in your life, basically giving you more data so you can make better decisions to solve a problem. That's ultimately what we're trying to do here. So let me go to my next slide here. Okay, so on the left is the military decision-making process. These are the 7 steps. So it's receiving the mission. It's ultimately, it's making, we want to articulate the decision. So identify what it is that the issue at hand, the problem, if you will, and what decision needs to be made.
And so mission says to me that I'm looking for a certain outcome as well.
Yeah, you're trying to accomplish
where
something.
I'm going.
Yeah, you don't know where you're going, but you know you need to go and get this thing done. There's something that's got to be done, right?
Okay.
And we don't know exactly how we're going to tackle it yet, but this thing, we got to take action. We got to do something. The second step is basically doing all the data collection. We need to gather all the information that we can about the mission at hand. And we need to understand where are we at ourselves in our life. We need to understand those external influences, like maybe who might be against us, what might be against us. We always think about analyzing the enemy is what we're doing. It's like, what's the worst case scenario? What's the most likely scenario that could happen? We look at terrain. How are we going to be able to shape the environment around us? We look at all of those things, which will help us analyze, what is going on in our environment, having the information necessary so we can make the best possible decision possible. So you'll see on the slide here, it says COA, COA, we call it COA. That stands for course of action. So course of action is basically your options. Like, what are your options at hand? And in the military, we typically try to, because all of this is the staff doing this for the commander, we're trying to give the commander 2 to 3 courses of action that will enable them to make their decision. So the courses of action is merely identifying your options. So it's you collected all the information, you tease out, the most possible courses of action, what's the most dangerous course of action, and then you start to develop your own options to counter those. Step 4 is course of action analysis. So now you're evaluating the information that you have and aligning that with the actual potential decisions that you could make, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So how do I want to go about doing this based on the information I've gathered thus far? What's the best course of action? What's the best match?
Yes. And what I like about this, when you actually sit down and you get a pen and paper out and you just gather all of the information, a lot of times what we're battling is our own fears. And a lot of typically when you write down, when you're trying to take on something new and you're scared, and most people are, because that's your biological instinct telling you, hey, something is happening here. We need to skill up. We need to get some help. There's that resistance and there's natural fear.
Yes.
70% of your fears are really self-limiting beliefs that really have no relevancy on the situation at hand.
Oh, I agree. And I think when you said, when you were talking about the enemy, I was thinking of I honestly thought we are our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
We stand in our own way 90% of the time more than anyone else does in our personal decision making.
Absolutely. So when you truly boil down and you actually think about what's really the worst case that's going to happen. I was recently working with a couple, and he's starting a new career. He's going on the entrepreneurial path. He's retired military, and the spouse was really scared because he's got a secure job with certain level of income coming in, but he was really, really unhappy. And when I sat down with them, okay, what would be the absolute worst case scenario? You have X amount of money coming in from retirement. She's working. Okay, so you don't make double payments on your mortgage. The absolute worst case scenario would be you'd have to sell your 4Runner. That really put them at ease, because it's some of the fears that we have. It's we think that things are going to be far worse than they actually are. Once they gathered all the information and did the work, it's okay, the absolute what's most likely going to happen? Well, okay, I'm going to be able to replace my income, and maybe I'm going to have to go 6 months without making a double payment on my mortgage. What would be the worst case scenario? I'd have to sell the 4Runner. Okay, well, it really for them, it was oh, okay, well, we can do this. And then now they're thriving in their new entrepreneurial business, but they were really hung up for a bit thinking about all the worst case scenario. So that's why we need to sit down and really look at the information at hand. What are all the possible scenarios that could happen? Because what you realize is probably 70% of the enemy's courses of action, which is your own fears, are really not going to happen.
And they're not.
But you do need to identify what truly could happen.
Exactly.
And then that's how you develop your courses of action to counter what could truly happen. But if you don't take that time to analyze, then you're going to suffer from analysis by paralysis and not get anything done. And that's what happens to a lot of people. So hence why we go through the steps, so you continue to move forward, right? So we're course of action analysis. So step 4, you're evaluating all the information based off the courses of action. And then step 5 is looking at, okay, we're going to compare our courses of action. We've identified 3 possible decision points that we could make, and we really want to compare them. So you can decide, what are going to be the outcomes if I implement this decision versus this decision, and truly break it down to what's important. And how we typically do that in the military is we call it red teaming or wargaming. Is we will sit down and go through that process. We'll have the operation from start to finish. So we're going from point A to point B. The enemy is going to be trying to stop us. So step by step in time, we'll have someone play the enemy. So it's okay, from this hour to this hour, this is what we're doing. We'll actually have we call it a sand table, but basically a map of what's actually happening. And we're moving pieces. And oftentimes the commanders are there to talk about, they're talking through okay, my unit is moving from here to here. We anticipate, it's going to take us this amount of time. We can get here, and having all the commanders talk through that. And when that moment in time is complete, then the enemy, okay, while the friendly forces are doing that, this is what the enemy is doing. And we're trying to think about, so the enemy is also in time and space. Okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm deploying my helicopters and basically trying to, so we kind of walk through that together. Now, I know that can get very technical. We basically walk that all the way through the operation. But when you think about your life, it's kind of like thinking about that course of action. And I'll give you a scenario here in a minute, but it's like thinking about like, okay, as I'm thinking about like implementing this change in my life, what are all the friction points I could encounter? Put myself in the position of maybe it's someone not approved, maybe it's my significant other not approving of this endeavor. Like what are they thinking? You know, kind of putting yourself in their position. Like, what are they thinking? What could they possibly say? What are the true objections? That way you can counter that and influence them by having a tough conversation, having the right things to say in a conversation, as opposed to having that argument that's just not going to go anywhere, right?
Exactly. And so you're anticipating the tools you might need to get through the barrier that may come up. And so you have an antagonist saying, what if this happens? What if that happens? When you have your map out. And so you have these people like making sure they're kind of punching holes in what you're doing. So you can see the terrain that you're about to enter and all of your scenarios, and you can go into that situation prepared. We call that plan, prepare, and protect at SugarX Global. And so,
so planning and preparing, like seeing unfolding the operation, like really thinking through it, will enable you to see things that you may have missed in your initial planning, or maybe you're like, oh shoot, I don't have this piece of information. I need to go get this information to make a better decision. So you're comparing the courses of action based off the information that you have and trying to determine what the best one is. And that's understanding the information that you have at hand, your options, and then also understanding by implementing each one of these options, like what are the friction points? What resistance are going to deter you from, achieving your mission objective?
and when you're making a personal change, it could be yourself. Again, I can't.
Yeah, you're fighting yourself.
Right. It could be that you're just uncomfortable showing up differently in life, and you might fear that other people won't approve of you, or that the people that love you, it'll be too significant of a change for them to come along board with, and they like you just the way you are. So, they're used to
Absolutely.
comfortable, and so those kinds of things can get in the way too. There's a series of questions that I heard that I think are like the NLP kind of people that use language, and they say, what will happen if you do the thing? What won't happen if you do the thing?
Yeah.
What will happen if you don't do the thing? What won't happen if you do the thing? And so it kind of gives you like this little square of thinking where you can get out of your own way a little bit, because you really don't know unless you take a chance what the final outcome is going to be. But if you if you do some preparation, you can have a good course of action that gets you closer to your target, I think.
Absolutely. I think that set of questions is really that's really the course of action comparison, like really thinking through your course of action is by asking those questions. I think that's powerful. I think doing that exercise is really helpful. So we're on course of action comparison. We've compared the courses of action, and now we're selecting one. So that's the output of that particular step, is we've selected one. And then the sixth one in the military, we call it course of action approval. We're basically, now the staff gets together and they present it to the commander, because the staff is doing all of this analysis while the commander is out basically thinking through what they might do. And that's why we have this process, because you have the staff, and then you got the commander, and then we all get together in the same room, and the entire staff is presenting all of the information, all of the courses of action that have been war gamed. And the commander's also been doing the same thing. And then we're getting together, and ultimately this is where the commander decides which course of action we're going to take as an organization. And so the course of action is approved. And this is where we begin to implement the decision. So there'll be like a orders product that they'll be sent out. So, hey, all units, all guided, we call guidons, the commanders, hey, we're getting ready to do this kind of maneuver. Start making preparations while the staff creates the detailed plan. So sitting down with a pen and paper and creating the details of how you're going to do this thing. And that's what orders production is. It's basically reviewing the decision that you've made and now creating a comprehensive plan and executing the plan.
And executing the plan in a sequential way, it sounds like. So you're gonna do things in the order that is going to make the flow happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we think about high performance. We'd always talk about projects, right? Identifying your next 3 projects. So it's having that project. So let's put this in a project. It's identifying, okay, this decision we've made is a project of some type. What are the next 5 moves? And in a military operation, we always have 4 or 5 phase lines. And phase lines are just like, this is the point in time in this operation that it's a measurable moment in time where you're making progress until completion, right?
Right.
So whatever it is that you're implementing, having checkpoints along the way so you know where you're at in the process.
Right. We say in SugarX Global too, it's not ours, it's just an old saying, focus, follow one course until successful. And
Yeah.
so and I really like the idea of like you have a start and an end to what you're doing. And I'm really looking forward to this number 7 because I think it's a very missed thing. I think people don't learn from what they're doing because they fail to review.
Yeah. It's like, so as you begin to implement what this new change in your life, whatever it is that you're pursuing, there's going to be changes, right? And being able to review on a daily basis, like how this is going. Like you've got your phase lines of achievement, right? You got your next 5 moves, so how you're going to implement this thing, but stopping and taking a moment because the circumstances or the environment of putting this into play is changing. It should be changing your life. It's probably changing some of the dynamics of some people aren't going to understand what it is that you're trying to do. And you're going to have to address that, right? Or you're going to find that maybe there's some friction points. Maybe I got to change the structure to my day to incorporate whatever it is that I'm doing. This new change you're going to have to review it and make adjustments as you go. And sometimes, we always say that most of our planning in the military, as soon as you make contact with the enemy, like the hard contact, like you have that first like friction point, a lot of the plan could change altogether because you were just not prepared for. We do the best that we can with the information at hand to anticipate what the enemy is going to do, but sometimes we get caught off guard or we just miss something. And that could happen in your life. You're trying to implement this new thing and it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And you really have to do that level of analysis to how you're going to keep going despite the friction that you're receiving.
Right. And I think it's just like a football game. You have 4 quarters. How it goes in the first quarter doesn't really mean that the second quarter is going to go as planned. And so I think our best laid plans, if we review, we can also find what worked as well. Like, wow, I'm using a tone of voice with intention with my child and making sure that they're held to their responsibilities without getting bent out of shape. That really worked well for me. And that can help me through by reviewing my decision to approach my child differently or whatever the small decision I made was. It can help reinforce that worked and I should repeat that decision. So it's not just about looking for your failures, but also looking for where you've had success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to look at the failure points, you want to look at success points and all those things for sure.
There's a quote, and I'm not going to get it right, but it's basically about a ship is always off course. And we always have to be navigating. And that's what this decision process reminds me of. I love it because it's so kind of fluid. And in some ways, it's an open-ended way of doing things.
Yeah, I like these steps because it's a procedure, right? You think of an airline pilot. The airline pilot, they fly the plane every single day, right? But they still have a sequence checklist when they start up the plane that they go through every day just to make sure that they're hitting all of the marks and thinking through everything before they take flight. And it doesn't matter, like a lot of people try to wing these things, but when you have a sequential step process like this, it forces you to really slow down for a minute and really think through some things so you can have the best possible outcome to your mission. And which is why the military does this. We can't just wing things, right? We would never win anything. The reason that we're so successful is because we do this level of analytical work when we make these decisions, and we're flexible enough that when we do hit resistance, we can still get it done. That's why we win. So I think it's important. So that's, these systems and having a checklist like this are really helpful.
I love that you use the word flexible too, because I think when we become rigid in our way of doing things, we really harm ourselves and others.
Yeah.
It forces us into a hole we can't necessarily get out of. I think flexibility is a very high spiritual principle. And it means that I can pivot, and decisions aren't like a tattoo. It's not like we can't change our mind or turn into a new direction. So This is great. I'm so grateful that you made these slides too, because I'm very visual as well. And I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people.
You know, one of the reasons that the US military is so incredibly successful is because that we allow flexibility. We understand that we have a planning process, but the plan isn't going to go 100%. And we give authority to our subordinate leaders to make decisions as long as you understand the commander's intent. And the commander's intent, it's a critical component of the order's production, is understanding at the end of the day, no matter what happens to this plan, we know it's going to get chaotic, but the intent is how it's going to impact our organization at the end. Like, I want to maintain 80% strength at the end of this. I want the enemy to be at this percentage of strength. This is how I want the battle space to look. And having clear cut end state will enable you to maintain flexibility, but still achieve your goal, because the goal is going to be the same at the end, but how you get there might change as you're dealing with all the friction that you're anticipating as you implement this new change. That makes sense.
This morning we did a meeting where it was write your own obituary. And the point was to have that end point.
Yeah, it's an end state.
Navigate your course of action for your daily living. And it's a very powerful exercise. And it's not, nobody ever put how much they weighed or how much money they make or any of those superficial things. It's all about the quality of life that you want to lead. And I can see how you could make an overarching mission. This is how I want to be remembered. Of course, both of us being trained by Brendon Burchard. Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter?
Yeah.
And how did I matter? You know, what were the qualities that people saw in me as a human being? I think this could be a very, very good exercise for making a little, maybe every 3 months, making your little battle plan for life.
Yeah. No, and I like what you said there about the navigating, right? You're on course, you're navigating your ship, but you have an end state in mind. If you don't have that identified, you're never going to get there. Like, you're never going to get there. You got to know where you're going. And oftentimes people have no idea. They haven't thought about where they're going and they're just kind of bumbling through life. And if you don't have a vision for yourself, you're probably going to work for someone who does. And you're going to always have that missing piece. You're going to feel unfulfilled because you never did the work to identify what your end state is. And you never did the work to get there. And it's something, as I think about all of the years that I spent in a classroom or in church, like, no one really sat down with me to, like, who are you and what do you want out of life? This is something, unfortunately, you're going to have to do on your own or get with a group. It's not easy to find people that do this type of work for most people, which is why so many people are just kind of bumbling through life. But the fact that you're having, you're going through that exercise with people, so incredibly powerful and important.
It really is. And I think that we think we want one thing. And when it really comes down to it, if we go deeper and if we just peel that onion a little bit deeper, we find out we want something so much deeper and so much richer. And I think that's why Brendon Burchard resonates with so many people, because it's about how we show up, how we perform, not the actual performance. There's a differentiation there that, I can go to bed at night and lay my head down on the pillow and feel good about my day and about my actions. And that's fulfillment to me in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let me walk you through like just a simple scenario that someone could apply if they were like thinking about their life. So let's talk about Joe. Joe and his wife are having a new baby. They got to find a 3-row vehicle. And I don't know if you've ever had to try to find a 3-row vehicle. You're looking at minivans, which a lot of people don't want to drive. Or you're looking at, a variety of maybe SUVs, but they all have different tow. Like, there's so many options, but you're kind of limited. But it's a problem that a lot of people have. I've been there. So you receive the mission. That's step number 1. You got to find a 3-row vehicle for your new family, for your expanding family. Number 2 is mission analysis. It's gathering all the information. So Joe starts to research 3-row vehicles. He goes to Edmunds. He goes to KBB. He looks at statistics like cargo room and where's the seat in the 3rd row? How much headroom do you have back there? Because you can get a 3rd row and a 4Runner. I got a 4Runner. I can't even sit in there. It's for kids, right? But you could get like a Suburban and you could fit a full-size human, right? So you're gathering all of this information. He reads reviews from professionals and consumers. He looks at things like gas mileage, ownership costs. And periodically he brings a question to his wife based on his research to make sure he's on the right track, meeting her needs and what she needs. And, at one point he finds out that she wants a 4-cup holder, 4-cup holders accessible from the front seat. And so he takes that information to refine, based off the information he has to determine which vehicles would have that. So that's the level of detail when we're looking at mission analysis, like gathering all the information, continuing to refine it. Course of action development, step 3. So at this point, Joe's got all of the research, all of the data. He's done all the planning initially, and he brings it to the table and he narrows it down to 3 possibilities, 3 types of vehicles. He considers the guidance of his wife, who rules out some of the courses of action until he has a refined list of vehicles that potentially meet the requirements that his wife has laid out. Step 4, the analysis of the wargaming. So at this point, Joe's got 3 vehicles in mind that he thinks that'll fit the bill. And he's actually out looking at the vehicles side by side. He does this online. He goes to dealerships and he does it in person. And while he's making it happening, he's asking all the questions to his wife to continue to get data and input from her. And during the wargaming phase, Joe is considering all the positives and all the negatives of each of these vehicle types. He may really like, how one vehicle handles, maybe one looks better, maybe one gets better gas mileage. And he's taking all of these into consideration. Maybe one's got a better turning radius. Maybe one's got you hit the button and all the doors open up. So he's taking all that into consideration. So step 5, now he's got the course of analysis comparison. So Joe's thrown out every potential thing that he can think of his desires and needs and wants and what he wants in a vehicle. And now he sits down with all of the new information from doing the side-by-side comparison, and he wants to present this to his wife. So he rules out the Suburban because it was too big. He rules out the Dodge Durango because it doesn't have the cargo space required. He's left with 2 vans, and that meets the requirements, by his wife. Step number 6, course of action approval. So Joe presents his wife with the Toyota Sienna and the Honda Odyssey. She's the commander, if you haven't picked up on that yet. So the staff is presenting this to the commander. So they're boiling it down to the Toyota Sienna and the Honda Odyssey. They go to the dealer and they drive each vehicle. Either one would be a good choice, but ultimately she goes for the Odyssey. So the staff has boiled down all of the courses of action that are possible, presents them to the commander, which is his wife. And now 2 courses of action, he's taken her to the dealership so she can make the final decision. That's what the commander is doing in this process in a military mission. So she drives them both, but she's really liking the Odyssey. She likes the way it drives, the comfort level of the seats. And so she chooses the course of action, which is the Odyssey. So they go into the next phase, which is execution. So in the orders production dissemination, the final step, the decision's been made. They have all the information they need for the vehicle. They're able to make a decision from an informed decision place. They negotiate a good deal with the dealer. They've gone through all the research. Now they're going through the financing and finalizing and signing the dotted line and ultimately purchasing the vehicle. And now they're enjoying the vehicle for the remainder of the time that they have the need for that particular vehicle. So they got Cheerios all over the place, milk, they're enjoying the vehicle and having fun with their expanding family. That is the process of military decision-making process applied to your life.
All right, so that now they need a different car. Maybe they still need a large car. So now they can review the decision they made for the Odyssey and decide from there, did they make the best decision or is there a better choice they could make?
Yeah, they can start this whole process over again in the event that they need to find a new vehicle that meets their needs, because it's basically a new mission, right? The current vehicle. So the kids grow out of the house. And it's like, okay, we don't want to be driving a minivan anymore. All the kids are out. Now we want that 2-seater convertible, right? All right, so let's go through this whole process again. And you can apply this to any aspect of
2-seater convertible. Some want a Jaguar, some want a Camaro, some want a Corvette.
Absolutely. So you go through this whole process again, because they all handle different, they all drive different, got different needs, different price points, so that's just a simple example of how someone could apply that to their life.
I think it's a great example. And I could see how you could use this for choosing, maybe you got 2 job offers or 3 job offers. Maybe you have 2 or 3 ideas that you have, and how do you prioritize which idea comes first? Which one is going to give you the rate of investment that you want, the rate of return on your investment, whatever. I mean, you could use this for so many things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a simple framework. You can make it as complicated, like the military does make it quite complicated. Because like I said, this is for battalion size, big staffs of people, but just following the steps. And, the screen over to the right, just using civilian terminology should help articulate this process a little bit better. But just know that this is a process used by the military that's been used by other countries, it's used by NATO countries. Big companies have modified this, and now we have this process that you can incorporate into your own life. It's a process that's tried and true, and it works.
Right. I would see, like with a business, you could say, oh, we need to hire someone for X, Y, and Z. And then you gather the information on the different organizations you might hire to do that work for you. And then you identify which are your best options, evaluate your information, select your decision, implement, and then maybe you review within 3 months. Maybe you have some kind of contract that, at the end of 3 months, you decide whether that was the right decision or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And now you still have all of the information that you've gathered, and you still have that access to that. So you can go back to step 2 if you reviewed your decision and it didn't work like you wanted it to, and just filter it right through again.
Absolutely. Yep. So this is what we call more like deliberate planning, like taking the time to do the planning versus shooting from the hip or hasty. This just requires some level of thought, and this process just enables you to really go through a systematic approach to do the analysis that you need to make the best decision possible.
Well, I'm definitely going to use this in a couple of my groups on SugarX Global. We do something called recovery protection. And I think this would be a good way. How am I going to get through Thanksgiving? How am I going to get through the holidays without eating foods that are not part of my plan?
Yeah.
Where am I going to be? How long am I going to be there? That could be part of the information. What restaurants are we going to be going to? What is on the menu that I may be able to eat safely? Those kinds of things. So then you can know your options, evaluate the information, make a decision, make a plan, implement the decision. And I think
one thing that we go through in the military when we're thinking about an operation, there's so many inputs and outputs, but one thing I didn't mention earlier was, like, we always come with a major problem statement. So when we do all of this level of analysis, there's usually like one significant thing that we have to overcome. And maybe it's something like, okay, how am I going to overcome? How am I going to be able to get through the holidays and say no to all the sweets? I'm going to be tempted. That's going to be the big problem. I go to all these, how am I going to not be tempted and not offend people because they spend all this time and effort making the sweets, right? We don't want to make them feel bad. So maybe that's our problem statement. How do we get through the holidays without, gaining 10 pounds? But usually when you go through this process, you're going to find like there's probably like one significant problem you're going to have to solve that you weren't really anticipating when you started thinking about, setting course on this new mission. And when you identify what that overarching problem statement is, you can tackle it better. It will enable your success to achievement to hit your end state a lot better.
Yep. Knowing what your potential pitfalls or your potential speed bumps, what's going to slow you down, what's going to, we always talk about expecting the unexpected, and that's part of what you do. What's the worst case scenario? What's the most horrible thing that could happen? And then you can have a plan around that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, but when you go through this process, it will help you not be, like you said, the unexpected. But when you go through this process, those unexpected should be significantly reduced because you have done the work and have done the analysis to prevent all of that. A lot of people don't think through all the potential scenarios, but when you do that, it equips you better to deal with it when it does arise, and you won't be caught unexpected as often.
So do you utilize this 7-step process for the most part to just kind of run through decisions? Is it almost like a second nature to you now?
Yeah, I think I've been a part of this process for so long that I do like a version of this in my decision making when I have the time to do so, especially like when I think about projects like every quarter. Just like business and military, I started implementing, I read the book, The 12-Week Year, and it really, like, one of the things that I teach in my coaching groups is, just like you for your business or military organization, everyone's operating quarterly. but we often don't operate like that in our own lives. And when you every quarter, like this week, we're starting Q4. This is the last quarter of this year. We're in the last final 12 weeks. And so like, what are your 3 major projects that you're working on for this quarter, and getting hyper focused on what those projects are. So this process enables me to decide what projects are most important and rule out, some of the things that might distract me. Because in high performance, just like I'm a running coach as well, you would think that we're trying to get my runners to run fast. So do more runs all the time and run faster all the time. Same thing with high performance. We need to be doing more, right? It's the exact opposite. What I feel like I'm doing is I'm trying to get people to do less, and I'm trying to get my runners to slow down, because when you run slow, you'll run faster. When you're doing less, you're going to stay more focused, and you're not going to get overwhelmed, and you're going to be able to get more things done more frequently because you're not distracted. And instead of doing, 10 things poorly, you're doing 3 things well with absolute focus and intention. And that's the problem in our societies. We have so many things that distract us. We live in this incredibly abundant society. So I feel like you got to sit down and you got to get laser focused. What this process will enable you to do is really like boil down like your projects. That's what I use it for.
Well, and I think that's interesting that you said, we live in a very abundant society, and yet we still have the ancient mechanisms within us that make us strive and have like the survival instinct that kind of overrides a lot of this. But it becomes focused in the wrong direction for many of us, to the more, different, better, to that dopamine hit reward center gone awry, because we don't have to hunt and gather, and we don't have to, we don't have to fight so hard for shelter. And these things gave our lives meaning and fulfillment. We sat around the fire in the evening and told stories about how we overcame this situation and this and that. And so I think that when we winnow our lives down to our real core values, we can really start to let some of the pretty shiny things fall away and live a life that gives us a lot more meaning and a lot more pleasure.
Yeah. And I think, the evolution of human, we weren't designed to live in these concrete jungles with screens and internet and all these things. We have not evolved. And so although we live in this incredibly abundant society, I think that we're still lost, because we're trying to have that meaningful conversation around the campfire, but we're not doing it. We're not getting that fulfillment from Netflix. We're not getting that fulfillment from these addictions, the sugar, like eating a bunch of cake, we're not, all these things that we're doing, we're trying to get that fulfillment and we're not getting it.
Even the, gathering information thing could be a roadblock. Someone could get stuck on number 2 because they could get into that analysis paralysis that you brought up initially, where they want to be 100% sure and guaranteed that they're going to make the best decision. And what about this? This person says this, and what about that? And so at some point you just have to go. You have to start.
Yeah. You got to assess time. And in this process, you need to put some time on this. Like, okay, because you can endlessly gather information. I do that. I tend to overanalyze things, and I know in myself, like I need to put something on the wall, like, okay, by this time I need to be done, because if not, I'm going to keep going for days and days and days and researching things. I'll do that. Like I just recently bought a camera, and I was like for a week straight, just like all these different sites, just trying to gather data, and analyze. At some point you do have to stop, and you do got to continue to go based off the information you have at hand. And sometimes you're not going to be satisfied with all the information that you have. You just have to go with your gut, with what you know, and go for it anyway. Because if not, you're going to get stuck. And you could get stuck in step 2 and never make it any further. And a lot of people do.
So is there anything else that we need to know about this decision-making process?
I think that anything else to know, there's a lot that can go into this, but I didn't want to overload people, because I think what we talked about today with the simple exercise of how you could apply this is good. I would just, I would give it a shot. Think of something that you're always constantly making a decision, and, try to work through the exercise and see how it works out for you. See if you can boil it down and just apply it. Because it doesn't do any good. Like, you get on a call today and watch this, and then you just shut it down and go back to what you're doing. You have to try to apply it. So that's what, if you're listening to this or watching this, truly give it, print this out and give it a shot. Look at something, maybe it's a simple decision you have to make in your life. Just give it a try and see what the outcome is.
Yes, I think it's really great. And thank you so much for putting this together for us.
Yeah.
And your
I
podcast. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, here I'm on the next screen. I actually have, here we go. So I've created like a little Google Doc that's a decision-making assessment. And it's basically like 10 different areas of, you may have seen a version of this, Anna, with high performance coaching, because I got this somewhere from Brendan's teaching, but basically rating yourself 1 through 10. It's hard to really measure. It's easy to measure your finances. It's easy to measure, you know, when you're working out and scale and how many reps you're doing and times, all of those things. When you're measuring your health and fitness, you can measure all that. It's a little bit difficult to measure like your future, like here, your future identity. Like, is this goal or activity relevant to my future identity? But the 1 through 10 scaling really helps you assess. And so what I've created is this Google Doc that anyone can go in, and I give this to all my clients, like, hey, fill this out. And if you get a certain score, it's kind of like a green light, or it's an amber or a red light. And this helps people make decisions better, because it's like taking these 10 aspects of your life and aligning this potential course of action with who you are. And this is like it gives you a score, and that score will help you determine whether or not that this is a good course of action for you or not. And if anyone would like to, like I said, it's a simple Google document. They could email me and I could shoot them the link, and it'll send them the answers to their questions so they can help them with their decision-making.
So if someone scored a 5, I would think that would be an amber.
Yeah, it's ultimately the end score of all of the different areas. However, you know, when I have a client and I review the sheet with them, it's like, okay, you got 8s, 9s, cool, that's all good. But okay, this one, you scored really low here in this area. So like, you know, your utilitarian value, is this goal or something that would lead to a useful outcome for me? You scored really low there. Well, let's unpack that a little bit and talk about that aspect of your life. What's going on there? Is there something that we could do to improve that? How could you make this feel like it's going to be a useful outcome to you? And so, yeah, so that's kind of what we do, is we kind of look at the highest scores and the lowest scores, and you know, the lowest scores probably need some attention, because it's just an indicator that in that aspect of my life, there's something going on that's holding me back.
Right. And it could be that they're not really living their purpose. Like if that intrinsic value score is low, maybe they're not on the right journey for themselves to begin with. They might have all the skills to level up in several of the areas, but it just might not be their cup of tea. And you see that where people just make a dramatic shift in their life, and all of a sudden they feel like themselves. They feel like, you know, I have a sense of purpose and I have a mission in life. So yeah, again, it goes back to matching our values up with what we're doing, how we're contributing. I love the word contribution. I love that it's in this, you know, a sense of contributes, you know, meaning. Yeah. So, I mean, I think like to feel pride in what you're doing is not the same thing as being egotistical. It's just something where you feel like you've made a meaningful contribution to people's lives. And so I know you've been doing that. Kind of goes back to that
obituary assignment. You know, what is your legacy?
Exactly.
I think humans, we need to have a sense of contribution, whatever that is. It's different for all of us, you know. Some people want to be the president of the United States. Some people just want to live a good life and leave, you know, a certain amount of money for their kids and assets and have these adventures. Yeah, for everyone, it's different, but we need that. When we're not fulfilling that sense of contribution, using our skills and talents to add value, I think that it leads to unfulfillment.
Yes, I agree. So thank you so much, Jay. This has been wonderful. I'll definitely put links beneath so that if you want to listen to Jay's podcast or get a hold of him for this, and I will also make available the slides. Or Jay, do you just want to have them email you if they want the slides?
Yeah, if they want to copy this, just email me, just in the subject, put decision or whatever. Yeah, just something that way, I'll email it to you. I have no problem sending this out. I hope this is helpful to you.
I think it's very helpful. I think this is wonderful, and I can't wait until you can do your high performance coaching full time.
I'm excited. Yeah. This has been fun. I really enjoy this work. I just wish that I just look back like, man, I wish if I would have got started with this in my 20s, where would I be at now? I think these are important conversations, and I'm glad that you're doing this work. I'm glad that we're on the same team, doing the same type of work, helping people. This is awesome. So thank you for allowing me to come on and into your community and share my thoughts on this topic.
Well, thank you. I was also at the 2020 San Diego Brendan Burchard, and there were a couple of teenagers there that were becoming certified as high performance coaches. And I just felt such a sense of hope, because if young people can learn how to live life fully engaged, like Brendan talks about, because I think we're just a bunch of chickens and we hold back. We don't really play the cards we're dealt. We don't really play full out,
Yeah.
as he talks about. And learning how to take risks in a healthy way, where we've looked at what the conditions are ahead of us and what can we do to navigate our course in life and become more fulfilled. That's a demonstration to our children, to our neighbors. If I can do it, so can you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a process by which we can make life better. I don't think that we just are little individuals. We always are banging into each other and having an impact on other people's lives, whether we think we are or not. So
Oh, absolutely. We
bringing our
do.
highest
And
selves is it's a great calling. So thank you again.
one of my favorite questions is, who loses if I don't win? And that's, that kind of keeps me focused on doing this work and being better myself, because who loses? I lose, my kids lose, my partner loses, everyone, my coworkers lose. When I'm better, everyone else is better. So,
Right. And your mission really is to help vets. Why don't
yep.
you tell us your mission real quick, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, I want to help veterans basically reintegrate into society and find that sense of their purpose and mission that they had in the military. And oftentimes veterans have incredible skills, and there's that sense of camaraderie and lack of a better term, that just sense of pride and commitment to being a part of something greater than yourself. And oftentimes we lose that when we leave the service. So I want to help veterans take their skills and talents, reignite their purpose, and help them find their next mission in life.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I have goosebumps right now. I was a nurse at the VA for my first job as a nurse, and I also worked at a vet's home, and there are just no better people. So
yeah, our society is really void in leadership, and I think that there's a lot of veterans that could use their talents and skills to help fill that void. There's no doubt. I mean, that's one of the great things about the military is the leadership training. And oftentimes we shortchange ourselves, or we just get stuck, or we can't, and we just need to get unstuck. So.
Yes. Well, good luck with that mission, Jay. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.